Hi there, I'm Jeff Merle and I welcome you to True Texas History. And today we're going to be talking about Colonel Kinney, Costa Rica, and Corpus Christi. How are all these things connected? Well, we're going to be talking about that today. One of the viewers wanted me to cover Colonel Kinney, otherwise known as Colonel Henry Lawrence Kinney. Now, this guy was an operator. I mean, I don't know another word for it, but he was born in 1814 up in Pennsylvania, and apparently in his early life he got into some land speculation early on, and his mom died early, went and lived with his dad, and apparently he had some relatives down here in Texas because that's where he got his first taste of things. They were part of the San Patricio colony that was located down here. But anyways, sometime around 1837, 1838, there was a financial panic up north and financial downturn, and Kinney apparently had some involvement with it, so he hightailed it down to Texas and ended up in Brownsville. Now, at that time, Brownsville was a little, well, not just a little sketchy, very sketchy. And he took on the name of, or the title of Colonel. Now, he says it was due to his participation in some of the Seminole Wars down in Florida. But truth be known, when you check the records, it's not there that he was a colonel. When somebody is an officer in the military services, there's got to be record of it somewhere, but you don't find it with Kinney. But anyways, he got down there and started operating. He opened a trading post, well, so-called trading post. In reality, it was more of an outlet store for a smuggling operation there on the western shore of Corpus Christi Bay. And it was a great spot, if you were a scoundrel, because Corpus Christi was barely inside of Texas. It was a ramshackle settlement away from the prying eyes of officials. If anything, they kind of turned a blind eye to what was going on down there. I know President Lamar often used Colonel Kinney and his assets. When I say assets, being in a smuggling operation, you develop networks, and Kinney had networks, and he had like 300 men, armed men, that operated with him. And essentially, they evicted a bunch of the squatters. They set up shop, and they swindled a lot of people out of their land. But it was one of the few settlements down there, and running a operation, I guess in some ways, it would be structured like some of the drug cartel operations. He came across a lot of valuable information, and that's why Lamar and some of them found him useful, because he knew what was going on. He knew what was happening down there in Mexico, and he was one of their contacts, almost like a spy network. And he managed making some money during that time, and the funny thing is, Kinney stuck his finger in politics enough to get himself on the annexation convention. Literally the committee that was involved with making some annexation decisions. Now, that's key because things started happening fast. In August, now watch the dates here. This is one where, if I had a blackboard, I would put the dates up on the blackboard to help you follow what's going on. August 1845, General Zachary Taylor lands at Corpus Christi with 5,000 troops. Yes, I said 5,000. And the only settlement around is Kinney's trading post. And one of the U.S. officers minced no words. He described that this was the most murderous, thieving, gambling, God-forsaken hole, and the Lone Star State are out of it. That ought to tell you something. This was not a wholesome environment, but this is all that the soldiers had. This is all that was there. Now, you've got an army of 5,000 men sitting here off the coast of Texas in August. Now, remember, the people of Texas did not vote on annexation to the United States until October. And annexation did not become official until December the 29th. So, I mean, literally, Texas was occupied by foreign troops at the time of the vote, and Colonel Kinney was right there taking advantage of it. You know, letting the federal dollar come on in. Bring it on. Bring it on. And so he had an opportunity to make money. And he did. He called the place Corpus Christi, although a lot of people considered it a Texas version of Sodom and Gomorrah. And it eventually swelled to a population of 2,000. He was even proud of the fact that, did a newspaper there. Now, it doesn't escape me the irony of such a environment being called or being named Corpus Christi, but a lot of times things are named for just the exact opposite of what they were. But anyhow, when the war finally did break out, because you've got troops sitting on the border, you've got Mexican troops sitting over there on the Rio Grande, you get two armies sitting right beside each other. Shout out to Amy Keller. When you have two armies sitting there, like the two biggest kids on the block, eventually they're going to fight, and eventually they fought. And guess what? Kinney joined the Texas Rangers. I talked about Captain Jack yesterday. So he joined up and became an officer under Captain Jack, and so he had some fun and games with that. When the war was over, he was still looking for land speculation, and apparently he had some good connections. Because Walker was interested in some land down in, of all places, Nicaragua. And he obtained some backing from some New York financiers and was in the process of buying hundreds of acres down in Nicaragua. Because at that point there was a lot of interest in what they called the Mosquito Coast, the Gulf side of the Latin American countries. And some of the federal officials thought that him going down there to Nicaragua was going to endanger or be in violation of some congressional act. And so he gets arrested, somehow escapes, gets out of New York, and ends up in Nicaragua. And down there in Nicaragua, he runs into a filibuster by the name of William Walker. Now, being that Kinney was his own man and not a follower, eventually there was some fallout between the two, between he and Walker, and but Walker did have some loyal, had some Texans associated with him. And Walker went ahead and eventually, although he was an American, he got himself set up as the president of Nicaragua. And one of the few things that stood in his way was Colonel Kinney. Because Colonel Kinney was organizing a faction, and you had Colonel Kinney involved in the faction, and Colonel Kinney eventually got chased out. But you had Walker, and you had Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt family was involved in that whole episode. And because Walker concentrated his power there in Nicaragua, the people of Costa Rica saw that as a threat, so they organized an army and marched toward Nicaragua, and they took part of Nicaragua, which eventually became part of Costa Rica, the Guanacaste region, if you've ever been down there. Beautiful part of Costa Rica. And but it was pretty wild, that whole thing. Um, Now, Walker's deal never did come through. You know, he didn't end up with his hundreds of acres in Nicaragua and retiring out there in the Caribbean like he wanted to. You know, I guess a lot of people have that. Well, hold on. He contracted for 30 million acres. This was not a small thing, but you got to wonder, how does a small town operator of a smuggling outpost in Corpus Christi end up getting the money to buy $30 million worth of acreage in Nicaragua? Good question. I might have to check some more into that. And then later on, he ended up marrying Mary Herbert, who was a widow that had several children. And it was an unhappy marriage, but that happened. He eventually settled down in Galveston. He was financially ruined. He was distraught because things didn't go very well. And he was in the Texas legislature, but he resigned it when all the secession stuff went on. He was very much opposed to secession. And he moved down to Matamoros and Tamaulipas and ended up finding himself in the middle of a gun battle between two rival groups, and he ended up dying down there in Matamoros. But it doesn't surprise me that, you know, a smuggler gets caught up in a fight between two gangs. What's new about that? You know, in many ways, Colonel Kinney, he could be a 20th century or 21st century drug lord with the way he ran things. And what's amazing to me, they've got a statue to the guy in downtown Corpus Christi. You know, you'd think if you put up a statue to somebody, you want somebody with upstanding morals. But hey, what do I know? I mean, a gambling den named Corpus Christi. Stranger things have happened. Well, I hope you enjoyed this short little rundown of Colonel Kinney and his life and its connection with these other events that were happening in the world at that time. If you have any suggestions, feel free to pass them on. I look forward to next time. Until then, vaya con Dios, my friends. Goodbye.